Madelyn, as far as I know, is the first St. John parishioner to make a trip to Medjugorje pilgrimage. And she's consented to share a little bit of that with us.
He said to make notes, but I know I would forget and I may run too long. So if I get too long or off the subject, just pray the Holy Spirit to shut me up, okay? Where to begin? I've had many graces in my life. Some I'd call minor miracles. And one of them in 1989, in May 22nd, I got a telephone call from an order of sisters in Louisiana. I knew them. They had 3 schools in Louisiana for the mentally handicapped and severely handicapped. They're the Sisters of Our Lady of Sorrows. And Sister Elizabeth Renzi started the order in the 1800s. Anyway, after much thought, and I'd always wanted to go to Rome, she was being beatified. She had already passed her other steps and was being beatified. And I got an invitation to accompany the sisters and to attend the beatification in Rome. And what a privilege. So I consented, and the moment I did, it had already been bugging me about Our Lady being in Medjugorje. And I thought, well, if I get that close, I've got to go further. So we had a meeting of the Catholic Daughters the following week, and I told them of the possibility and that if I got in the area, I would like to take prayer requests because I would intend to go to the mountain. And so I collected their prayer request and put it in an envelope and sealed it. One lady also offered me her rosary to take, and I took her rosary with me. Well, we flew into Rome, and Sister Carla picked us up at the airport. She drives like a maniac. She picked a bunch of us up in a Fiat van, and she just laughed when we complained about her driving 140 kilometers on a city street. And she laughed when she gets to these roundabouts. She said, the first one to the horn gets the right of way. So boy, all you do is hear horns. Well, making it short, I was privileged to land there in Rome and get to go to the beatification with Pope John Paul II. Got to sit within 3 pews of the front. And it was a beautiful ceremony. After that, the day went on, food, sleep, and we toured Italy, all the famous places to go, and Assisi, Orvieto, I mispronounced that. And we settled down one morning and I said, I'm going to Medjugorje. Would anybody like to go with me? Well, 2 ladies that I knew from Louisiana, they were a little bit older than me, said they would like to go. And I had a friend that wanted to go. So I said, we're going. And the sisters spent a lot of time trying to stop us. It's communist country. You cannot go. I said, well, we're going to go anyway. I don't know how. We can't speak any language. We can't speak in Rome. We can't speak in Croatia. We can't speak anything. So, but we're going. After much counseling, the sisters said, well, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. So we made it out to the public transportation, got on the train, and rode the train to Rimini, Italy. And that was where Sister Elizabeth Renzi started her order. We got there, got off, walked, went to the docks, bought a ticket for a boat, went across the sea. We landed in Split. Now the 4 of us, this was an open air cargo type boat. We did hear on the bottom deck somebody playing a guitar and singing. We recognized the song, but not the words. So we knew we were going in the right direction. We get off the boat, and there's 4 or 5 buses there around outside, and kept walking toward the gate to get off the property. And the buses were loading and they were going. It got down to the 4th one. There were 5. Well, the doors shut and didn't know what to do. So I started running wrong side one of them. And the 3 sitting over there, I said, y'all just pray. And I run alongside that bus and banged on the door till I got their attention. And the people in the back were hollering at them because they were watching me. The driver opened the door, and all I could say was, anybody on this bus speak English? I repeated it again, and finally I heard somebody in the back say yes. And I said, would there happen to be 4 empty seats on this bus? And a few minutes later they said yes. And I said, can we go? I know you're going to Medjugorje, and we need to get there. There's no taxis. There's no public transportation other than your scheduled buses, tour groups. So we wonderfully got on that bus and rode through their countryside to the town of Medjugorje. When we unloaded, we approached the bus company and tried to pay away. They refused the money. That's a grace right there. They let us off in the neighborhood of the church, and the church was there. Its plaza was not as big in those days. Mind you, this is 34 years ago, June 24th, 1989. It was the 8th anniversary weekend. You couldn't stir the people with a stick. It was so crowded. You had to watch where you walked to keep from stepping on somebody. Well, there were so many people there, there was no room in the inn for anybody. We approached the information booths. We went to the store that was there that we looked at. There was very little commercial stuff in those days. The church was the same as it is today and very recognizable. But I wouldn't recognize it today in the back of it, because at the back of the church when I was there was an open field, just grass and dirt. And the town was very small. Well, we walked that town. We asked everybody we could find, do you speak English? And we're hungry, so we went in this little place. It was like a deli that made sandwiches and what have you. So I walked in there, and we finally got a order in, and I asked the man behind the counter, do you know of anybody that would have space for us? And he said, no, ma'am. Everybody's homes are full. Well, the man in the kitchen overheard us, and he spoke a little English, and he came out and he said, wait a minute. And he got on the phone and he called a nephew or a cousin in the next town several miles away. And he said, they're not ready for guests yet. They're adding on to their house, but it is within where the weather wouldn't get you. Wonderful. And he called them, and that precious young family had built 2 rooms onto their house and a bathroom with a commode with a chain off the ceiling, which we had to take a picture of. But it was not finished, and they apologized for that and couldn't speak English either. And he said, oh, I will take you every day to the church before 8 o'clock Mass, and I will pick you up after the last Mass in front of the church. What a beautiful gift. We went in and we tried to make a deal with them and pay them for the nights we were going to stay. And they said it was truly communist territory, because when we did step off that boat, there were military men with machine guns. You tried not to speak English in front of them. You just kept walking. We got there and let off at the church. About every 15 to 20 feet, there was a man with a machine gun. They were within talking distance of one another. So you were well watched and well threatened. Well, anyway, back to the couple that let us stay at their house. They had a book that we had to sign, and they said, the interpreter said that they had to have a name for each person in their home, because if they communists come in, which they regularly went into these places, and he said, if your name's not on that book, then we'd get arrested. So we signed the book, and we were willing to pay whatever they wanted to stay there. Well, we started laying money out, and they started picking it all back up and giving it back to us. They ended up taking $5 per head per night. And we tried to give them more, but the grace of God was with us, because they said that if we gave them more, $5 was all the communists was allowed. They went to every house and picked up every dime more than $5 per head. That was all they allowed them to feed us and to take us back and forth. So what a grace there. So we were privileged to get to go to the church every day, and spent most of the days in the church attending Mass. There was an English one that would come along, but most were in foreign languages. Out back behind the church were about 30 metal folding chairs. And in these chairs, when we were walking around, were priests with the name of the language that they could take confessions of. And there were long lines behind every one of those chairs. It was beautiful to see people lined up like that. Well, back to the church. For lunch, after we got out for lunch, the natives there had fruit on the sidewalks. So we bought fruit and had fruit for lunch. We made the trek up Apparition Hill. There were no paved streets, no hotels, no motels, nothing like it is today. They've really developed the city. We walked everywhere, and it was a long way up that Apparition Hill. When I got there, we knelt down, we pulled the dirt away from the bottom of the cross and put all the prayer intentions down in there loosely and covered them with dirt. We laid our rosaries in the dirt under the cross. We said our rosary and we left, walked back down that hill. It was beautiful. We were walking behind people's individual homes, and on their fences they had crocheted items, embroidered items to sell, and we had to buy from there. So we did get some beautiful things there. But to be able to see the people, we passed the house of one of the seers, and she was standing on her porch talking to a tour group bus load, and it was really crowded and backed up, and all I could do was get a picture because I couldn't understand anything anyway. So we kept walking and went back to the church, and we spent 3 days there and spent most of the time in church. And another privilege we had is church got very quiet, and there was a bright light. And the seers, all 6 of them, were in the choir loft, and they had an apparition while we sit in church. You could see the brightness of the sunlight coming through, but I think it was more than sunlight. But what a privilege to sit in the church while that was going on, that they were talking to the Blessed Mother. But anyway, it just was a beautiful time. And the most beautiful thing I saw in all of this, we got there before school started for the children. You go in church and you had to hunt a place to sit down. The children were with their parents. And when the school bus come at the back of the church, the children got up and walked out with their lunch and their books. Their mothers got up and kissed them and made the sign of the cross on their head, sent them off to school. The mother sat back down and was there when the children got out of school and came, and they made room for them to get back in the pew, the love, the kiss, and the sign of the cross on the forehead. I never saw so much love with so many people. Just love. They welcomed you. They put up with you. It was just a beautiful time and a beautiful privilege. And when the time was time for us to come back, the young man couldn't bring us back, so he had a friend take us back to the boat dock. We get to the boat dock, well, on the way to the boat dock, he told us every one of us had to wear a headscarf and to keep our mouths shut because they would be stopped several times by the communist soldiers and they could not hear English in the car. So we sat in silence wearing our babushkas, whatever, and made it, got through those stops and got back to the boat, went back to Rome and enjoyed the rest of our visit. But it was just a real privilege to bring home 3 rosaries that had turned gold. And thank y'all. He said, I forgot to tell you where I kept my cash. When I left here, I put $500, 300 ones and the rest fives in my bra. And so everywhere I went, that's where they come from.